Social Music Talk.
So we started playing Blister in the Sun. Then it came out in the Grosse Pointe Blank soundtrack.
Yeah.
Okay.
A
Great soundtrack.
redone version of it. And it suddenly got a whole more, whatever it was. But I heard the whole story afterwards from Anna Statman because she'd signed him. And the first album outsold everything, I believe, that Slash had put out at that point. And what was very trippy about it was that they released their second album in '84. When I was on LBS in Detroit, we were still playing the first album that came out, I believe, at the end of '82. I'll look that up in a second. Second album came out, and like nobody cared because it didn't have Blister in the Sun or Added Up on it. So yeah,
But they kept on
you guys
cranking
talk-
out. They kept on cranking out a long
did.
list of singles. They did a show for us at Quad in '94, in June of '94. They were the headline act. So they must have headlined other shows around
They
that
did.
time.
They did. And every time they come to San Diego, I
They
try
were
to go see
huge
them
in
play.
Sacramento. I used to play them at Popeyes
Yeah.
and Club Sonar in '91, '92. A lot. Like 3 or 4 of their songs.
That's
They would pack the dance floor
Definitely
every time.
when we were starting to play a bunch of their
Gone
music.
Daddy Gone. I love that one
Yeah.
too, man. That's
They had a bunch, and they kept on putting out good songs, I think, through the '90s. But
I agree, man. It's
But a lot of bands got lost in the shuffle when corporate types took over the programming, and those kind of bands got weeded out somehow. The storyteller bands, the
Yeah.
ones who had something really imaginative to inject into their music, somehow they got weeded out and were drowned out by the loudness wars.
like you keep saying, man. It's all part of the Dumbing of America project.
Well, that's part of
it's
it.
just let's make music even dumber, and then this.
Well,
everyone
the
end up-
Telecom Act that made radio more corporate, and therefore the music industry became more corporate because it started tightening up its rosters. It had merged. It went through merger mania, and so they had, in order to clean up the freaking debt, they had to start getting rid of a bunch of bands.
Right.
And radio started having to get rid of jobs. Thousands of jobs disappeared. So that's the difference between this century and last century. And I believe the time marker for when all this started to change was somewhere in the mid-'90s, around the time J-Corps bought 91X for $155 million.
I don't think I think they bought the whole company.
Okay, the company.
The whole company.
Okay.
It was recorded, the first Femmes album was recorded July of '82. It was released by Slash Records on vinyl and cassette April 13th, '83.
Okay.
And they put it out on CD in '87. So originally it was just the vinyl, and they put 2 extra tracks, Ugly and Gimme the Car. And in 2002, they remastered the album. They filled out the disc's lengths with demos and added a couple more live tracks. And it finally went platinum like way later, like 1991 it went platinum.
Was that their first platinum album? Because I
It
know
was their only platinum album.
Okay, yeah. A lot of those bands were like XTC. I don't know if they had any platinum albums, but they were like a really good band that the alternative scene loved. But the sales weren't there like they were for Green Day and the punkier, more current, more vibrant bands
Right.
of the '90s. So anyway, that's my explanation in a nutshell of how the world changed so radically different from the '90s until now. '90s was the heyday of alternative radio.
Well, just like when you say that, I'll argue. That was when all of the football players had to become soccer players. I think it was the heyday because a lot of people realized that Nirvana broke out across the whole country, which is a guy that I do want to get on my show eventually is Dave Markey, who did the movie the year that punk broke.
Okay.
And he recorded that in '91, I believe. He filmed that in '91. But the thing about it was one of the greatest things that happened. It was also one of the worst things that happened because at that point, suddenly you had, as opposed to having forwards that knew how to kick the ball through the net, you had these guys who were quarterbacks going like, "Oh, I know what I'm doing," and they didn't.
Too many quarterbacks.
No, they just started playing shit like the Nixons and all this other bullshit. It's like, it was like had they left it up to the pure 7 programmers who had been programming alternatives since day one, then we wouldn't have the problem we have now.
Or add the 5 others like that included me.
If you grew up doing high school radio and you understood what it was and trying to get to play Simple Minds in the 80s, that makes sense. But I'm talking about the guys who basically were thrust into the format.
Yeah,
because
well,
they flipped a rock station to whatever.
or the other way, like from a soft AC thing to a harder thing, and it didn't seem to.
It was always the third
Yeah.
running alternative. The third running rock station in town.
Yeah.
Always flipped to alternative. So it had shitty jocks in the first place.
Yeah.
And they suddenly had to change their names. I remember at one point talking to Andy Show, and he goes, "Yeah, these DJs, they all sound like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. No, what was it? They all sound like Power Rangers."
Right.
So suddenly it was like What was the station up in Reno? Blaze.
Oh yeah, Blaze Brooks,
They sound like
KRZX or KRZQ.
Blaze, and what was
Q.
what was Chris's nickname back in the day?
I don't know. I don't remember
He
that.
went to program Extreme. What was his name afterwards?
I couldn't tell you.
God, I feel horrible now. He's going to listen to this podcast and go, "Halloran, how did you forget my name? My name was Rector." It's like it was all these fucking, But that started because it was Jed the Fish and Freddie Snakeskin.
Yeah,
and-
there were character names at first.
yeah.
And, Live 105 had its characters, Steve Masters and Mark Hamilton.
That's his real name, isn't it?
Yeah. And Mark Hamilton, the British accent, you had to have someone like Richard Blade from K-Rock, someone with a British accent. We had a British accent afternoon guy named Giles Hendrickson.
Giles.
Did you ever have a British accent person?
Steve West.
Okay.
I had lunch with him dinner with him last week.
All right. And he's still going after all these years
He
in
is.
this market. Huh?
He does Sunday mornings on 94.9, plays the Legends of Alternative. These are the bands that. But Steve was also old school English, where he wanted to play Lamb Lies Down on Broadway on 91X.
Okay. All the British.
He wanted to play
stuff.
all the British stuff.
I'm the fourth Beatle.
Just
or the
like
fifth Beatle.
alternative radio. No, I was the first alternative radio programmer. I've heard that from
Everybody who started. See, this is the thing. Everybody who started their own market is because you couldn't pick up BCN in Detroit. You couldn't
Right.
pick up whatever. It was whoever got to that market first and started playing stuff. There was guys before me that were playing underground music on radio stations because Detroit started that stuff.
Cool.
With CJOM and ABX and stuff. I just happened to do it at a time, slightly after the Pistols, kind of
Yeah.
disbanded. And so the difference is that,
WMMR is that a Detroit?
Cleveland.
That's Cleveland. But what is
Or MMS is Cleveland, MMR is Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. But do those call letters sound like the beginnings of rock to you? Like I've heard those
I
call letters
believe
associated with.
I don't know the first technical rock station in the country, but I would believe that ABX was close to it. In the late 60s. KLOS started in 69. They're celebrating their 50th year.
But they
this
just
year.
got bought, right?
They did.
Does that mean anything?
I would imagine it means good things for them because the
Okay.
company that did own them wasn't adventurous at all. So we'll see.
And you think they'll stay rock, active rock?
I would
or-
hope so.
or
Well,
what-
I don't think they're active at this point.
okay.
They're classic rock at this point. What does it say the first rock station in the U.S. is there? Are you looking that up?
I should look that up.
Something tells me it'll be a Cleveland
First
station.
rock station in America. I don't know why the word Cleveland popped in. I didn't say the word Cleveland.
I said it. Maybe that's why.
okay.
First rock station in America.
There we go.
ABX was early to the scene.
But didn't Detroit, because of being a Motor City, Motown place, weren't they early on like that whole rock format?
They were early, but this is what I know because I was living there at the time.
Okay.
But, was it one show on ABX? Was it an hour long, a week long? I have no idea. I mean,
What
because
year did you become conscious of radio?
early 60s?
Okay. Wow.
Early 60s because
You're-
CKLW.
I thought we were the same age, but I was born in the early 60s.
I was born in the late 50s. I was
Okay.
59. I was born.
I was 62.
Yeah. Okay. So big
Same-
difference.
same
Probably.
generation.
I'll say I became aware of music and what it was doing because my mother was born and raised in Sheffield. So when the Beatles got on Ed Sullivan, she knew who they were because of her friends in England that were like, oh, blah 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 blah. So
So you
know,
remembered that.
my mom was basically getting texts. I'm joking. She was getting emails back and forth. What does it say, Sam? First rock station?
It's confused. It thinks I'm looking for an oldies, like
You
the
gotta,
first station.
you gotta type it in. What was the first rock station
I
in
did that.
America?
I did all that.
And what does it say? What's the thing that came up?
It just gives me the list of the oldest radio stations in America, and then it goes on to talk about KDKA in Pennsylvania in 1920.
So Google thinks the word old is the main word.
I didn't even do the word old. Like, it's the first rock station in America. Okay, here's... the top 10 classic
You
rock.
see, you're not on the microphone. See, this is where you're
Oh, sorry.
you're
I
driving
forgot.
me fucking insane.
I'm sorry. I forgot we're doing a show.
Yeah, you're doing a show, goddammit. I'm going to type it in my Googly, and I'm going to find out what
And
it says here.
This is all inspiring, like a future game show to see who could come up with the answer first using their fucking smartphones.
Oh, that's a cool fucking thing. First rock. Yeah, let's do that game right now.
Well,
I think Howard's gonna kick my ass because he fucking knows tricks I
Well,
don't.
we're already doing the first question is what was the first
rock station.
rock station in America? And
I know what the first hard rock station is.
and it depends how you define rock.
Right, because there's dozens of.
that might mean free form to some people, and others no, it has to
According
be.
to this, WOR, first FM rock station in 66.
Yeah. They're gradually being accepted as a daily fact of America when New York's WOR debuted their first FM rock station.
Was Murray
You
the
still
K?
don't have your headphones on. You're
I think Murray,
I don't like the headphones on because they're such bad headphones. I don't want to listen to myself.
I think Murray the K was on WOR. He was an early freeform DJ who helped redefine the whole
It was
thing.
always called progressive. It was always called freeform. But it says here the first ones: MMR in Philadelphia, BCN in Boston, HFS in DC, XRT Chicago, MMS Cleveland, EBN in Cincinnati, CJOM and ABX in Detroit, ZMF in Milwaukee, one in Minneapolis, Norfolk, ORJ in Orlando, KSHE in St. Louis, KMET in Los Angeles, KSAN in San Francisco, KTIM in San Rafael.
And I could agree with all of that. Did it mention KSAN, San Francisco?
That would have been, yes, KSAN in San Francisco.
So that was the early group before the whatever it was called, Radical 7 or whatever you said earlier.
Well, because you got to remember, we were fighting against Kansas,
Yeah.
Foreigner, and all the bullshit bands that eventually got played on KSAN and KOME and all those stations. We were fighting against that. We wanted to go back to be progressive, meaning, in other words, play the Pistols.
Did you care about the banner of rock, the rock format, like album rock or anything?
The term rock,
Modern rock.
The term rock meant everything to us because we didn't consider the Pistols a punk band. They were just a great rock band that we were into.
And that's what the Seattle band said of themselves. They said that they weren't grunge; they were just rock bands.
Because that's what they were.
They were rock bands. The term grunge kind of came out. Somebody coined it, and what annoys me.
Spin magazine, I think.
Based on
But-
clothing and fashion.
Yeah, but it was
more, right?
clothing and fashion. It was
Yeah.
because, and the funny thing about it is as somebody who grew up in the Midwest, where not quite Seattle, because Seattle rained, but it was still got pretty cold. When you went to somebody's house, you take your jacket off, put your jacket on the back of a chair, then your flannel will be on so you're warmed up a little bit. Then your flannel will come off, you tie it around your waist because it would get lost. And then when you left the house, you put your flannel back on and your jacket on. But it was always T-shirt, flannel, jacket, layered, out the door.
Wow.
Yeah.
In Michigan, it became those puffy jackets, those puffy things that everybody's got puffy vests now because it was brittle cold, not wet cold. And that was the thing. They looked grungy because they were wearing old jeans with long johns underneath them. So the rips, nobody cared. Your long johns would show through it, and that was basically it. It was a grungy look, not so much the sound.
Right.
What they were playing to me, their style of music, their sludgy music, I was more like sludgecore as far as I was concerned. Because when you listen to the early, it was just more, it was like early Soundgarden stuff. It rocked, but
Yeah.
it was sludgy compared to
Yeah,
everything else that was out
It had an aggressive sound, but I also found that a lot of alternative music from that Seattle Pacific Northwest area was full of ballads. Social music.